Motion to adopt those, we'll consider that.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are adopted. Do we have the public library piece ready to go? Okay, then, gentlemen, if one of you would make a motion, let's change the order up and take first item number 2, general fund reserve for future improvements.
Mr. Chair, I offer a motion that we would take first.
Is there a second? Is there a
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Standridge, item number 2, general fund reserve for future improvements, budget revision number 5.
Yes, good afternoon, council. This item is to request a budget revision within the general fund reserve for future improvements to be able to create the North Ridge Road Stabilization Project that you heard briefed in Projects Committee. This is the amount of $85,289. We are basically defunding a project for fire station number 6, which is their design components, which they no longer necessarily need that total amount, and the construction will be funded separately, and creating the North Ridge Road stabilization amount for that same total.
Okay, we're not expecting the fire department to come back to the well to get this later on?
No, sir. So since the full construction is going to be, multi-million-dollar, this small amount that was set aside for the extra design is not necessarily going to be needed when you consider that much larger total that will be coming.
Number 6 is the $10 million one the state's.
No, sir. That's station 11. Fire station number 6 is the one that's Loop Road. Mm-hmm. And so that total construction would probably, I think, is going to be around $5 to $6 million.
All right.
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Revision is approved. How we doing on library presentation? Nope.
Brian's over here. I'm right here.
I know, we're not worried about you, we're worried about your pictures.
Do item number 3.
All right. Is there a motion to go ahead and, we'll count your motion as changing the order.
Yes,
Item
sir.
number 3, 2022B warrant budget revision number 1, Ms. Standridge.
Yes, sir. This is the item that was briefed also in Projects Committee by Ms. Michael on the lift station 21 equalization tank and pump improvements project. Basically, this is the amount that Mr. Crow questioned whether or not that was an SRF project or a bond project. This is definitely an SRF project. However, because of the contingency needed for this new contract extension, we are requesting to pull this from the 2022B contingency amount. 2022B is the water and sewer portion of the bond that we issued last year. So it's just pulling $67,000 from the contingency and putting it towards the project.
Okay, and that leaves the just under $3 million there?
Yes, sir, that will leave $2,985,000.
How much does that leave in the contingency, Carl?
I'm sorry?
How much does that leave in the bond contingency?
$2,985,441.
Okay. Which is this number right here?
Yes, sir.
Any other
Sorry to ask
questions?
that question.
No. Good question.
You're an accountant, right?
Yeah, but it was right in front of me and I should have read it and I didn't, so that was not a smart.
I always say sometimes budgets and accounting or that sometimes they
And I will
don't
say
make
this,
sense together.
I hope it's rare that I throw a softball right over the middle of the thing. You could have hit that.
I appreciate the easy home run. Thank
I'm
you.
appreciative of that. Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Busby, we are.
All right, with the committee's permission, we will return to item number 1, Tuscaloosa Public Library funding. Ms. Pearson, Executive Director, good to have you back here.
Glad to have you.
Ms. Warner?
Good afternoon, Mr. Busby and members of the council. Yeah, you click. We're going to try and do this efficiently. And first, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to listen. I've had good conversations. We have had good conversations with, Mr. Busby and Mr. Crow and Mr. Wilson and Mr. Mayor. Thank you for listening. You were the first one to respond back when we talked about the issues we were facing financially, and you immediately called back, and we were able to have a good meeting and share information, and I really appreciate that. So why is Brian Winter standing up here? Well, I've been on the library board for about 3 years now, and about 3 or 4 months ago, I became the treasurer of the library, and Jennifer Pearson here became the executive director not long before there. And we decided to do kind of a deep dive into the budgets because we were looking at them and we just didn't think we could make ends meet much more without starting to cut back. So part of this is we're here because we wanted to share with you what we really are. And not only do I have Ms. Jennifer Pearson here as our incredibly dedicated new library director and extremely energetic, we also have Amy Patton, who's our CFO, which is an inside joke, but she's really not a CFO, but she helps us with the finances, and Saquon May, who does all the IT, which in a library is a huge job, I'm sure much like handling IT here. You ready? So I had a short little program here, just want to kind of take you where we are. Before we even get to the numbers here, I want to just share a couple things. Number one, as you know, the library has 3 branches. The main branch at the bottom of Queen City on Jack Warner Parkway. Number 2 is the Weaver Bolden branch, which is in Mackenzie Courts over in District 1. And number 3 is a branch that is in the Bobby Miller Center down 359 South, right by Hillcrest High School. And each of those entities works through the main branch, which provides services to those. The 2 branches are served by the main entity, which provides services to support those. The city has historically funded the Weaver Bolden branch as a separate line item. The county has started funding the Brown branch as a separate line item. And so as Mrs. Pearson and I were going through the line items and trying to really get this down, see where we were, because we realized we just didn't have enough money anymore, what it became to understand is that the Weaver Bolden branch, and frankly the main branch, that the funding was not staying up or catching up with the interest rates and the historical needs of the library. For example, and I'll take you to this first thing.
I have a question, Ron.
Yes, sir.
And Mayor, I'll direct it at you or maybe Ms. Sanders. This separate line item funding of the Bolden Weaver branch, what's the background? Is that what we've been doing?
Yes, sir. It's been that way since I was on the city council. There was the Weaver Bolden Library used to be adjacent to the Benjamin Barnes, current Benjamin Barnes YMCA. And then when Mackenzie Court opened up under the Hope 6 grant, the library moved there. But the city's funding, I believe, for the most part, has been around the $340-something $1,000 range.
Where does that show? Does that show up in the larger library line item under agency funding?
When you see your budget, you see Tuscaloosa Public Library, and then you see special appropriation Weaver Bolden branch.
Okay.
A little more background to what the mayor said, and I have given each of you, and I think Mr. Mayor handed you, a report from the Board of Trustees, or what they were called at the time. I think Mr. McAbee at that time was in charge of that, which basically said that the funding for the library is not meeting the requirements, and therefore we're going to close the 3 branches. There was a branch in Northport City Hall. There was a branch out in Cottondale, Vance, not Cottondale, pardon me. And then there was the branch over next to the YMCA at the Benjamin Barnes YMCA at the time. And so ultimately the Northport branch and the Vance branch closed. I think Commissioner Harrison, Councilperson Harrison, was able to put together some funding to keep the library open and funded, and it became a separate line item at that time. That's what I understand. I can't put my hand on a Bible about that, but that's what I understand.
Okay, so proceeding then, it is the habit that we have adopted, and it's been about the 340 range, and it shows up as a special appropriation underneath.
Yeah, it's a little different than that. I can show you that in 1 second.
I want to say, Mr. Busby, that the last time our appropriation changed was, I think, after the new Weaver Bolden branch opened, and then there it goes. They got
this is the history of the funding for the Weaver Bolden branch. And so what we did was we just took a look back for 10 years because the books and the history records get a little difficult to comb through before that. So as you can see, for the Weaver Bolden, it was at 430 in fiscal year 2013, and now it's fiscal year 2023. It's at 367, 650, which has been for the last 3 years. And looking at this and seeing the overall funding, of the library, and this is just not a city of Tuscaloosa issue. This is a community-wide issue with our funding partners in Northport and our funding partners in the county. And we have been having and will continue to have some discussions with them that I'm going to talk about a little later. But as you can see, not only did the funding drop, but also if you put in the net effect of inflation, especially the 4% in 2021 and the 6.6% last year, we're really down by the fiscal year 21 number, 41% for Weaver Bolden, which, although we've cut it to the bone, now we're in the position because of the funding, and that's, again, it's not just the city of Tuscaloosa, it's been an overall situation, and frankly, I think some of the folks who were in Jennifer and my position beforehand might have been afraid to actually come make this presentation to you, because it's hard to say, hey, we need more money.
But before we,
Yeah.
Jennifer, is there, or Brian, either one? So that, I think that is impactful, okay? I mean, those numbers don't lie. Is there a utilization of that facility that goes along with it?
Yeah.
I mean, is there,
And I'm
is there something to explain it?
And I'm going to show you that. Let me try and take you through the steps here. If you'll go back, Jennifer, I just want you to see the overall. So this is the total funding for the city of Tuscaloosa for library funding. And as you can see, over time, since 2013, the actual dollar drop is $132,000, which is negative 6%. Okay? But when you add in that inflation rate, it actually is down 32.28%. So if we were going to be even funded from fiscal year 2013 and now, we would actually be at about $2.42 million. If you'll go ahead to the next one. Oh, the other way. So this is the main library funding. This is, if you take out the Weaver Bolden, this is what's specifically put in for the the main library. And as you can see there, if you look down, it's gone from 1.489 million to 1.419 million, which is a drop of 4.69%, but with inflation, it's at 30.79%. Then if we go to the next one, that's with the Weaver Bolden, that's really taken the biggest hit. And again, no fault to the city council. I don't think the library's ever come forward and said, hey, this isn't really fully funding this. So, to the extent, I think this is just something of a lack of communication.
Ryan, up until this point, to reiterate your point, no one has come here and said, this isn't funding the
Right,
Weaver
right,
Bolden. You
right.
haven't said we're short $300,000, we're short.
Nobody's ever said that before.
No one's
In
ever.
our funding, it's been in our funding proposals in the package that we fill out. at the
Right,
end of the
okay.
year. It's been in there, but I don't know to what extent.
It's
It's
been
been-
communicated
It's
to
good
us.
communication.
Okay.
And I understand that. I mean, when you have all the agencies in here, everybody's coming in and everybody's asking for more money, and you can't analyze and evaluate this. And that's why, since this is such a big line item, and it is such an important part of our community, for many reasons, we really wanted to get back up here and share this with you. Jennifer, would you go to the next slide? So, just so you understand, the Tuscaloosa Library is more than 3 buildings. What the Tuscaloosa Library has become is a STEM resource for the schools. We provide STEM projects, and we have little kits. You want to tell them a little bit about that?
So we offer 2 sort of outreach programs through the library. We have Labs to Go and Tinker Tubs. They're both, I talked about them the last time, they're curated tubs of technology, STEM technology that include robotics, circuits, VR, and then we have things inside the library such as a Glowforge and 3D printers, but these are checked out to the schools, to the teachers. They have a lesson plan included. We can check it out to them, or we can go to them, and we will do the program there as well. And so it's an extension of what they are able to offer in the classroom for the students.
So that's the STEM resource program. The other thing we do is we have a catalog exchange program with the schools. So each of the schools, the budgets for libraries for schools is really, you know this, Mr. Mayor, from back in your day, it's pretty small. There's hardly much funding at all. So we interchange books on a regular basis with the city and the county schools. That's something we want to grow in the future. So let's go to the next one. So one of the things that's important to understand, somebody asked, is in the library like Blockbuster Video? And I think the answer is pretty definitive no. If you look at all the people who we
No, I
would...
said, how do you keep from becoming Blockbuster did.
Well, I didn't even say it was you, Mr. Busby, no guilty conscience here.
Guilty.
So, I think what you see is, if it is,
But
then
it's a pertinent question.
I think it
Well,
is, but, go ahead.
Different from Blockbuster, who did not change their model of business or how they did their, exchanging whatever. Libraries have evolved, and we are constantly evolving and changing, and we aren't just books anymore. We're also becoming like community hubs where people come for financial literacy, for healthcare literacy,
All right, see, I think
technology
that's the
literacy.
beginning of a pertinent answer to a pertinent question.
And if you were to go to the library, what you would see at any given time, like when I was down there this morning, there was a group of about 12 or 14 ladies who were doing the cross stitching, which is so amazing to watch. In the evening, you'll see different groups of students there studying in small groups from different elementary schools. You will see kids there studying themselves, and the computer lab is used. Everybody thinks because we have a phone, everybody's got one. It's just not true, especially in our community. And the coolest thing that the library does right now is we have these hot spots. So, our county, I was looking at this, it's literally bigger than the state of Rhode Island. And most of our county does not have access to internet. If you go out behind Northport and beyond the city, all those rural areas, they don't have access. So there is a constant list of folks who literally want to come in and get hotspots because they can take it home and they can get in with a satellite and get up and down to do work on the computer. One lady from the western side of the county actually got her GED degree using these hotspots. So it's one of the amazing things that the library has done that we need to expand and build upon. The other thing that the library hasn't been able to do, though, it hasn't been able to serve all areas because our size is so big. And the city's big too. I mean, literally Northport is closer than I am, and I live in the city, certainly closer than folks in your district, Mr. Fail. We don't necessarily get out to the districts, we get out to the schools, but for example, one of the things that we have with Para is we've had this library there. Well, we would like to expand that so that people who can't afford to drive, because gas costs a lot of money, or can't get here, could come to a Para facility or a fire station, and we could have what I call the Star Wars libraries, which would literally be where people could order their books, they could come and pick them up, and they would bring them back. It's pretty amazing, and you think, I'm an old guy now, but it's pretty amazing compared to where I was.
Do you worry that if you take that approach, and one of the things that Para struggles with, because you nailed it, you've got a county the size of Rhode Island, that's a huge geographical footprint to provide services. If you provide a la carte services, and then governments only fund that a la carte service.
Right. You can't sustain it.
You can't sustain the main branch, which is providing services to everyone, and Para suffers from the same issue.
Absolutely, and Mr. Mayor, I was gonna get that to the end, but the question has been, well, where does the library wanna go and how do we get there? So let me answer those questions for you in a second, if you wouldn't mind. Because I'm trying to get through quickly, and I get rolling, I never shut up. So let's go to the next one.
We've got ample time, but
This
let's
is
make
important.
Don't ever say that to me, Mr. Busby.
We've got Mr. Manasco with $1.4 million
So,
sitting behind you.
one of the questions about Blockbuster is, if you look across, and I was a nerd in the library, I went to the library every weekend with my dad when he was getting his PhD. But if you look at libraries across the country, you can kind of compare yourselves to them, okay? And if you look at the Tuscaloosa Library, where we are right now, across the board, if we had county, city, and Northport, we're at $19 per capita. There's 211,000 people in our county, I believe, or 221,000. 227? Okay. So what our library is right now is 19 times $227 per 19 times 227,000 people. But regionally, it's $24 a square foot. Now, nobody likes to just throw comparisons out, but the reality is that our library is significantly underfunded than the regional. If you look at Alabama, with libraries that average 226,000 people in it, they're actually spending $42 per capita on their libraries. SEC schools, which we like to compare ourselves to, and this does not include Nashville or Knoxville, okay? The library there are spending $45 per capita.
Do you know how many of those are county versus a city or a maybe in some cases like a
They're-
Knoxville Metro.
Yeah, they're mixed up, Mr. Mayor, and what we did, if they had a city and a county, we put them together and added the funding up. This was actually put together by the consultants we hired last year, and
The
they
ones
have
that worked
extended.
on the concept
Yeah.
potentially?
Yeah, and rethinking libraries, and they're both business people who came into the library world, so they think about this as not just public service, but how do you do the numbers, well, that's the analytics of it, so to speak. Would you go to the next one? And then often, of course, I've heard people mention this, and I, of course, being a businessman who's gotta pay the bills, the question is, well, aren't we just employing too many people? Well, I think this really shows that we're not. At one point, the library had close to 100 people working in it. So in 1999, it had 0.16, then the funding, it went up to 0.39, but now we're back down to 0.17. The gold standard, which is put out by the Alabama Public Library, not association, services, the state agency, they say you should have 0.5 per capita, okay? So we would theoretically have, what's that, per thousand? Yeah, per thousand, so 0.5 divided by 222, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 100. So I think honestly, looking at this from a business side, I really think we're doing a whole lot with not a lot. We're really making strides in programming. For example, they had a Hispanic Day at the library, probably 1,000 people there. At the Halloween bookaboo, Bootacular, there are probably 2,000 people there. As a matter of fact, Elizabeth, 3,000. Elizabeth and I tried to go, and we couldn't find a parking space, so we went for Thai food. But we did want to be there.
So we've got about 12 minutes.
Okay.
Before I've got to get to the next item, so.
Okay, let's keep going here. So effectively, these are the type of things that we would like to do. The bookmobiles, the stations, the bookmobiles inside, this would get us out to the city and the county, and then working with either in fire departments or other public places in other districts, have these, what I call Star Wars machines, that, Mr. Mayor, which allows people to come close by and get their stuff. And if we could put one of these in each district, it would be fantastic for the library and fantastic for our citizens. And the bookmobiles, one or two of the bookmobiles would get us out more to the schools and help us really take that to the next level, as well as help for our adult literacy programs. Go to the next one. So, you said, Mr. Mayor, how do we get there? And I know sustainability is the question, and that's really where I am. And I think that is the key question, because one of the things the library is facing right now is 11 active leaks in the roof. And again, that's nobody here's fault, okay? Nobody told you about it. But I've actually been on the roof, and Mr. Busby's been on the roof, and it's pretty amazing. We have to be able to sustain the library and sustain the programs. Now, I bring this to you as an example of what happens when we work together, when all three governing bodies work together. Because the metro budget for the animal shelter, or as my daughter would say, the dog pound, she has that great dog 5-syllable. In 2018, I think it was Council President Tyner and Commissioner Acker, and then Jamie Dykes sat down and they put together a funding plan and a plan on how to fund the Metro Animal Shelter, okay? And if you look at it here, it goes to 2018, the budget was $890,000. This year, the fiscal appropriation is $1.445 million. It's a 51% increase, effectively. So, I think what I would challenge us to do, because I don't think we've done this for the library, is I would respectfully request, submit to the council, beg the council, if we could have one person, if the library could have one person from the city who could sit down with, like they did with the Metro Animal Shelter, one person from Northport who would have the same, authority to sit down and figure out a way to fund this, and one person from Northport, we could get something down on paper which would help for the long-term funding and success of the Tuscaloosa Public Library. We have an immediate issue coming up, which is the fact that our roof needs to be replaced. Along with the roof needs to be some cast iron drain pipes that are 40 years old and some mechanical equipment. Right now, that's going to cost between probably $1 and $1.25 million. And we're going to have to come to you for funding because we don't have that kind of reserve.
So is there any, because we're getting ready to present our capital budgets, I know the initial request was 5 million, but your immediate, was that more long-term?
Well, that was,
Including the entire HVAC system, they have determined that there's a component, an air handler, that we could replace now and wait on the children.
So
So that-
1.25 is the ask.
what I'm saying, because we have all these active leaks in this roof that's gone terribly wrong, and Councilman Busby can witness that, can be a witness to that, we have to get that fixed right away. Right now, we have 11 active leaks. So we put the other stuff on hold until we can get the roof and the pipes done. 'Cause we have,
We do not have a total cost yet.
we don't have the
We've got
total
a-
cost
We
yet.
have proposals submitted and were accepted from some architectural firms here in town, and we're waiting right now to get that cost.
I think if you can't, ultimately, it's their decision. All my job is to recommend it, but if you can give me that number, because we're working on capital budgets, and so we can plug in the right amount. Do you know if Northport and the county were open to the?
We've
funding
had
that?
conversations with folks in both places, and I'm not gonna speak for them, but they said if there, if there's something that needs to happen to get the library from leaking, yeah, we're gonna help. So we haven't had a formal thing yet because we haven't known. What we've done so far is ask we're trying to be good stewards of the money. We've asked multiple architects to get us proposals on bidding this according to federal procedures. So right now, Ellis was the low bid on that. I know they're not low bid, but they provided us with the scope of services, which was lower than the other ones. So they're putting that together. We'll get bids on that, and then we'll be able to come up and get you that number specifically.
When do you think you'd be prepared to come back to Mr. Busby's?
For that, I hope 30 days.
Okay, how about, I know we may run out of time, Mr. Busby. I think one of the things the council wanted to look at was the overall budget for Weaver Bolden, what
Right.
services you get, how many people participate, just kind of get the
Right,
whole.
and I'm gonna show you that real quick, 2 seconds if you would.
It's not-
That's what I
Oh,
was
it's not in there,
wanting
okay,
to
so
ask.
right now, here's what Weaver Bolden does right now. Historically, it's
That's
been,
what I wanted.
it's been about 15% of the library's participation, membership, door counts, and circulation have come out of Weaver Bolden, okay? Right now, post-COVID, it's low, it's 9, okay? We expect that to continue to go up. Since COVID happened, we had less folks there. I ask that each of you go visit Weaver Bolden. It's really, that Weaver Bolden Library is a special place. What it does for the African American children, and I can emphasize, but I don't know what it's like, but when you walk in, there's books right there that are African American people that are heroes. So there's those types of books there for kids who want to see somebody like themselves in a great position. It's a really special place, and a lot of kids actually want to come there without parents. So it's one of those almost community centers. I think it's very special. What we're asking for you to do is basically to fully fund Weaver Bolden, and the number is, let me see here, I've got that number here, and we've shown the mayor these numbers, but basically it's what? Yeah, it's $321,000 additional, which would fully fund the Weaver Bolden Library.
Additional, so that's the
367 plus 321.
367 we've already put in
678.
for this year, so we're pushing what?
654 would be.
It's actually 678 all in if we do the whole thing like we need to do it.
Because, Mr. Chair, as I remember, Mr. Crowe and I, as we talked in the committee, we wanted to find a sustainable measure to keep Weaver Bolden, going.
Active.
Yeah.
And
So that was one of our major concerns, the mayor, because the mayor had presented something to fund it for the year then. Mr.
And-
Crowe said, why can't we find a sustainable one to keep it on going?
right.
So,
And so that's the number to get us to fully fund it moving forward.
yeah.
What that does is if we don't fully fund Weaver Bolden and we want to keep it open, we have to take people away from the main branch, and that pulls away our ability to do the things we're doing there. So right now, because of the overall funding and the lack of funding at Weaver Bolden, and again, nobody's fault here. What we have to do is we have to cut hours, we have to cut programs, and we have to cut materials. Books, our book buy is down, we've cut a bunch of digital resources, we've cut the hours of the library, and we've had to cut programs, and one of which is the summer reading program, which is an incredible program. My kids did it. I mean, I'm sure some of your kids would have done it too. So that's kind of where we are on fully funding Weaver Bolden. And we'd ask you to consider that. We can go through, line by line, every item on it. What we've done is we've basically taken it, and we used to do it 20-10, 70-20-10, but based upon the usage, we've made it basically 20-15-15 between Weaver, Bolden, and the Brown Branch. The Brown Branch is less expensive to run. We did the numbers on that. We've actually come out a little bit ahead at this point, frankly, because of the fact that Para used to charge us some funding, which didn't really make any sense for us to be paying Para for that. We've worked out with Para to resolve that problem. So now Weaver Bolden we get for $1 a year.
Right.
Para we're going to basically get for $1 a year.
Would y'all be open to, if the council approved a year one appropriation of a similar agreement that we have with the tennis center, where at the end of the year, you basically provided us as close to an audited statement of saying our expenses were $601,000.
And we balance it off.
And that way it's not a strict, just blanket appropriation.
And I think we need to do that. Not only do we have to have an audit back, but I think we've got to have some cost of living adjustments in there, because when we looked at all the numbers, right down to the amount of money we're paying everybody, we're paying a lot of people that, I don't want to say this publicly, but can make more money at a quick food place, So Mr. Mayor, you were with me in DC when we saw Hubert Humphrey's quote. It's how we take care of folks in their sunset of their life, their sunrise of their life, and all those who can't appreciate the sunset. And the library's got to be a place to provide opportunities who can't get those opportunities otherwise, and to enhance opportunities for those who might have opportunities. And that's really what the library needs to be. It should be a beacon in our community. What we want to do is go to the county as well and have one of your members, the finance committee members, Mr. Busby, Mr. Crow, Mr. Wilson, sit down, or council president, sit down with the other folks and say, if we do this, this, and this, then we can provide these services. We can provide these services in each of the council districts. Yeah. We can provide these services in each of the county commissioners' districts.
So,
and Northport, because they'd have to step up too.
I'm gonna have to.
That's good, I'm done.
To a close for this session. And I'm gonna make a motion that we table it for a week, because I'd like to come back. There were some great points brought up in here. They've generated some questions that I've got, and I think the other.
Yeah.
And I don't, Jennifer, the handicap you suffered when you came in at agency fund, literally we were compressed into blah, 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 and it didn't work. And I don't want that to be this time. So I'm gonna make a motion to table for a week.
And I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then we come back next week and hit this again. But
Yeah.
at that point, I have some questions I want answered as a part of this, and I don't want it to be rushed and turbo pressed for time.
Appreciate it, Mr.
All right.
Busby. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That would leave Mr. Bobbitt or Mr. Holmes.
Yes, sir. You may recall our last insurance litigation committee, we discussed what we call the big policy, our general liability and property insurance policy. And I told you we would come back to this committee when we had a number. We got a number at the end of last week, so the renewal for that policy this year will be right at about 1.4 million. It's $1,405,570. The big question I know is going to be what's the difference between that and what we did last year.
What's the difference between that and what we did last year?
7.6%. It was just under 1.3 million at 1.298881, or $1,298,000 last year. So 7.6% increase. The increase of total property value for our insurance increased from 544 million to 615 million. So there's both an inflation increase, plus we need more coverage because we have more things. Mr. Bobbitt and Mr. Manasco spend a lot of time going over this, so they can answer more granular questions if you have them.
Okay. Rich, you wanna pop up and we'll see if
Sure.
there's any questions? Why don't you tell us how our experience on this policy compares to the general trends?
I think your experience has been very good. The main thing that we've had claims on has been in the automobile sector. We've really not had that many in the property sector since the tornado in 2011. But with that being said, the city has grown substantially over the last year and over the last
You mean
years.
an asset value?
Yes. For example, we, this past year, we deleted 74 vehicles off the city policy, but we added 85 new ones this year, or this upcoming renewal. As you may recall, when I met with you before, I stated to you that on the automobile, it's a composite premium policy, which means we take the account of the automobiles at the beginning of the policy term, and we do not charge you for premium on the ones that's added. So that makes up some of your change in the increase because you've added so many new vehicles that have comp and collision coverage, where most of the 74 that we took off only had liability coverage. So that impacted somewhat there as well. But the additional premium that we've gotten is also based upon the substantial increase in values that the city has. To break that down, it's about a 10-cent rate per $100 of value with a $1,000 deductible, which is, I wish I could get that on my home, and probably y'all do too if you did the math. It's outstanding. The other thing that we did do, which I shared last year, and the year before that, we had a $75,000 deductible on our general liability for sewer backup claims, because we'd had a lot of those in the past. Chris England's not in here today, but I've worked very closely with him and to work on that aspect of the city's exposure. And last year we dropped that down from a $75,000
Is that
to
sanitary
$50,000.
sewer, storm sewer, or both?
Excuse me?
The sewer backup claim?
It's both.
Both.
It's both. And we dropped that last year from $75,000 deductible to $50,000, and with the hope that we could still keep managing those down. And this year we've got it to a $25,000 deductible, which is outstanding. Which is what we've been shooting for. So I think the city, excuse me, has done an outstanding job of trying to better handle those type of situations, be more proactive on that. We've had a couple of bumps in the road this past year. If Chris were here, we could go into detail, but I know time's limited on that. But we did pay all of those and had success on that, if you will. But you know, the city has added a lot of properties. When I say that's building of the structure itself, the contents inside the building, and any of the outside structures, such as fluid tanks, I will say, that we have. We got 2 department heads here, or 3 over here, that I've met with. I always go out and meet personally with them, and then work with their designee on getting all the stuff back and working together on it. But there was a lot of increase in items this past year that we really paid close attention to, and upped the value on certain things. Did a lot of changes out at the airport this past year. We caught up with all of those for this, and that's the reason of the premium increase.
Mr. Crowe, any questions? Mr. Wilson?
I'm assuming all this, Rick, is replacement value.
It's replacement value and it's blanket basis.
Motion approved.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to be brought forth Finance Committee today? Okay, is there not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.